Well, you found me. This is the Vintage Woodshop. I'm Sandy, and as I like to say, welcome to my playpen.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a while. It's been 7 months. Today, I am going to play with this chunk of wood. A friend of mine, Julia, kindly contributed this chunk of cedar, as you can see. It's already made the shop a lot more aromatic. But I've been contemplating this for the last few minutes and deciding how and what I want to do with it. There's obviously enough wood here to make 2 bowls. I'm thinking that I want them this wide as opposed to this wide. So I'm thinking I'm going to cut this thing right here and see what happens.
So typically in cutting a piece of wood to put on the lathe, you would consider cutting the pith out. But this isn't green, so I don't have to worry about it. So now that the wood is cut, I'll use the compass to determine where the center is so that a hole can be drilled for the pivot point on the circle cutting jig. So the center's been determined. Now I need to figure out how far away from the blade I need to set the pivot point in order to round out this blank. Rounding out a blank on the bandsaw saves you a lot of trouble when you finally get to the lathe. The rounder that thing is, the faster you can spin it and the safer it is. Yeah, this got a little scary right here. Watch how that blank is jumping up and down. First of all, the blade could bind. Secondly, it is cutting it at an angle, which you will see in a few minutes is going to create a minor problem, not insurmountable. Hang on to the end of the clip and you'll see the second piece of wood that I in fact did make a bowl out of. But my resolve here is also I need to make myself a new circle cutting jig. Some people have asked why I open the door on my shop for the bandsaw. Well, sometimes my shop isn't big enough to operate my bandsaw. Now I have the blank mounted on the worm screw, and because of the undulations on the top, I decided that I didn't have a real good spot to put my light center. Mounted up the Forstner bit and Jacob's chuck, and flattened out a spot to make things safer. In this next segment, you're going to see me switching off from the Ellsworth 5/8 bowl gouge to the Easy Wood rougher to the Easy Wood finisher, back and forth, depending on how much air I had to cut.
Got this thing all leveled out. I've got the frying pan over on the bench with the hot melt glue in it. That's all hot and melted. So now I'm going to prepare my, made out of good old-fashioned fir, to put on the bottom of this thing so I don't waste wood. Gonna go dip it in the frying pan, bring it over here, center it up, let it set up, and start spinning it. Here we go. Got a drill bit in here to center it up on the hole, and I've got the one-way chuck there to give it a little bit of weight while it sets up. I have seen some guys take a waste block, put it on the back of the wood, and do a hot glue gun around the edges. And I don't believe I could do that. I don't think it would be strong enough to hold. I have been doing this on my bolts forever. I have yet to have a tenon come off. It's been very, very safe, and that's what we want. I got to get that drill bit out of there. As you can see from the top camera's view, I screwed up when I cut this thing round. The hole that I had for the centering pin on the circle cutting jig on the bandsaw was not deep enough. So when it sat on the bandsaw, it got crooked, and you can see that it's tapered this way. Well, it was kind of tapered that way already because of the cut of the wood. So here's my design idea. This is how I think. I'm gonna make a fat bottom bowl. I'm gonna round this off and take this part off until it's round down to this point, and then see what kind of a bowl I can do. I was gonna core it, but there's not enough there to go to the trouble of coring it. This sure is a pretty piece of wood. Okay, I'm gonna shut up and start making chips fly.
Here you see me switching constantly back and forth between that 5/8 inch bowl gouge that I got from Daniel Ellsworth and the Easy Wood detailer. I really prefer using the bowl gouge because you get to direct the chips. The carbide tools generally come off right in your face. See what I told you about coming off right in your face? Now with the carbide tool, you can direct the chips to a small degree. Notice how low I have the tool rest set. That lowers the angle and it lowers the point from which the chips eject off the wood. This was a bad choice. I'm sorry that I used the Starbond Black. If I had used the clear and pushed some sawdust into that, I think the finished product would have looked a little better. I think that exaggerating the flaw actually detracts from this particular design. Okay, this is really important. Listen up. As you listen to the sound of the gouge in the wood, that deep thump thump at the bottom end of the sound scale is going to get a little lower. Also, start watching the top edge of that because this thing is starting to come out of the chuck. Watch carefully and listen. This is where I figured out that apparently that Douglas fir disc got compressed and all of the trauma it was suffering in that gouge turning as much air as wood and slamming itself on there, it actually had loosened up a little bit. It has been years since I used either my bull rest or the spindle rest, but here I'm fiddling back and forth between the two of them. I finally settled on using the spindle rest because I thought that the wheels being further apart would lend greater support to that piece of wood that was spinning. Notice in the next few seconds of the video that I swap tool rests frequently. I'm reaching way down to the bottom of that bowl and ultimately got that Forstner bit out there to hog out a little more material to make the going a little bit easier. Using that big Hurricane butter knife negative brick scraper to just get rid of the tool marks, do a little final shaping, get ready for sanding, and watch the dust. That despite the fact that I have my big jet air filtration system running, in addition to my 1250 CFM dust sucker that you see pointed over there, but there's still a bunch of dust. So take note, I did not want to stick my hand in there because of all those sticky out parts, so I took a piece of all thread, threaded it on there, and put a sanding disc on the end of it. I figured that would be safe to stick down there and sand. Going along just fine and dandy. Got a little bit of a catch there, and bingo! Boogered that one up. So, plan B coming up. So I tried hand sanding. I tried sanding with my angled sanders with the bolt static on the lathe. I ended up using the angle grinder. That worked out quite well. Got some of the tool marks out of the inside that I needed gone. Notice I was using that angle grinder without the guard on it. What I'm doing right now is fixing the slice in my finger. Notice the masking tape. I sanded through all the grits from 80 up through 400 and ultimately broke out the good old flap-o-matic with 125 grit flaps on it, and that turned out to be the most successful experience I had sanding. I was able to do the edges of the natural edge on the bowl. I was able to do the inside very successfully. I even was able to spin that bowl with the old Flappo Sando on there, and that one was quite successful. Was the safest of all the sanding options on the interior of the bowl. Had to use the Dremel tool here to clean up some of the edges. Worked quite well. I leave it hanging there for just that purpose, and then even do a little hand sanding in those crevices. Okay, here comes the fun part. The sanding's all finished and it's done to clean the thing up with a little alcohol. And when the alcohol goes on, you get to see the grain, and the grain just popped on this beauty. I'll follow the alcohol with Axe sanding paste, follow that with Axe polishing paste, and I followed that with a couple of coats of shine juice, and then worked it down with some 3M pads. As you watch me brush the shine juice on, shine juice, of course, is equal parts alcohol, shellac, and boiled linseed oil. This thing's just getting prettier and prettier, and I need to ask something. I was a school teacher for a whole bunch of years, and silence is golden occasionally, but I don't think in a video. As I'm doing these things, it's hard for me not to describe what I'm doing because my intent is to pass on my experience. So I guess my question is, would you prefer no talk, some talk, or the talk I'm doing here? Let me know in the comments. I would appreciate it. So by way of concluding this video, let me arrange the lights and show you this thing that just came off the lathe. Thank you for watching. I need to apologize for not showing how I took the tenon off the bottom and finally finished sanding and polishing the bottom. Let me put up a couple of close-ups and finally give you a look at the other bowl I made. So as you look at this and the one following, do me a favor. Look at the finish on this bowl. This grain is really, really pretty. Look at the finish on the next bowl and decide which you like better. My wife likes this dull finish, but this is the finish I prefer. I prefer the nice shiny finish that brings the grain out, accentuates every fine detail in the bowl. We'll leave the debate up to you. Drop a comment down below. In the meantime, thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the next one.